The year is 1914. Just imagine it. Life felt so very modern, didn't it? People were dressed in the latest fashions, with long skirts for the ladies and smart suits for the gentlemen. New inventions were popping up everywhere. Motorcars were beginning to share the roads with horse-drawn carriages, and the first aeroplanes were taking to the skies, a truly wondrous sight. There was a tremendous sense of confidence, a feeling that humanity was striding forward into an ever brighter future. Culture was flourishing with new art and music and literature. It seemed like a golden age, a time of unstoppable progress. Who could have guessed the turmoil that lay just around the corner waiting to pounce? But underneath all this glittering confidence, things were not quite so rosy in Europe. There was a great deal of tension bubbling away like a pot left on the stove for too long. One of the biggest sources of this unease was the rivalry between France and Germany. You see, France had lost a war to Germany back in 1870 to 71, and with it, two precious regions, Alsace and Lorraine. This was a bitter pill for the French to swallow, and they never really got over it. Germany, meanwhile, was a relatively new country, unified only in 1871, and it was eager to show off its strength and claim its place in the sun, as its Kaiser Wilhelm II rather dramatically put it. This ambition made all its neighbours quite jumpy. Then there was the matter of navies. Britain, being an island nation with a vast empire, had always prided itself on having the most powerful navy in the world. Britannia rules the waves and all that, but Germany, under its ambitious Kaiser, decided it wanted a big, strong navy too. This started a frightfully expensive naval arms race. Both countries began building bigger, faster and more powerful warships, each trying to outdo the other. It was like two boys in the playground, puffing out their chests and showing off their muscles. This naval competition created a lot of suspicion and bad feeling, especially between Britain and Germany, pushing them further apart. And as if that wasn't enough, the major European powers had got themselves tangled up in a complicated system of alliances. Think of it like playground gangs. On one side you had the Triple Alliance: Germany, Austria, Hungary and Italy, though Italy was a bit of a wobbly member, as it turned out. On the other side was the Triple Entente: France, Russia and Great Britain. These alliances were supposed to keep the peace by creating a balance of power. The idea was that no one would dare attack anyone else if they knew it meant fighting their mates too. But in reality, it meant that a small squabble in one corner of Europe could drag everyone else into a massive fight. It was a recipe for disaster, just waiting for a spark. Now let's talk about Austria-Hungary. This wasn't really a country in the way we think of one today. It was a huge, sprawling empire made up of many different nationalities: Austrians, Hungarians, Czechs, Slovaks, Poles, Ukrainians, Romanians, Serbs, Croats and more. It was a bit like a very old patched-up coat. Many of these groups, especially the Slavs like the Serbs, were desperate for their own independent countries. They were tired of being ruled by the Austrian Emperor Franz Joseph from faraway Vienna. This rise of nationalism was a massive headache for the Austro-Hungarian government, constantly threatening to break the empire apart from within. Adding fuel to this fire was Big Brother Russia. Russia saw itself as the protector of all Slavic peoples, especially those Orthodox Christians like the Serbs. So whenever the Serbs got restless or felt oppressed, Russia would make sympathetic noises and offer support. This, of course, made Austria-Hungary very nervous and angry. They saw Russia as meddling in their internal affairs and encouraging Serbian nationalism, which they believed was a direct threat to their empire's survival. It was a dangerous game, with Austria-Hungary trying to clamp down on dissent and Russia subtly encouraging it, a proper international chess match. Into this powder keg stepped Archduke Franz Ferdinand, the heir to the Austro-Hungarian throne. In June 1914, he decided to pay a visit to Sarajevo, the capital of Bosnia. Now, Bosnia was a province with a large Serb population that Austria-Hungary had annexed just a few years earlier in 1908, much to the fury of Serbia and Serbian nationalists. So, for the heir to the Austrian throne to visit Sarajevo, and on a very significant Serbian national holiday too, St. Vitus Day, the anniversary of a historic battle, was seen by many Serbs as a deliberate provocation. It was like waving a red rag to an already very angry bull, a truly insensitive move. The day of the visit, 28th June 1914, was filled with a terrible sense of drama and unbelievable bad luck. A group of young Serbian nationalists trained and armed by a shadowy group called the Black Hand, had planned to assassinate the Archduke. Their first attempt with a bomb failed. The bomb bounced off the Archduke's car and exploded, injuring some bystanders but leaving Franz Ferdinand and his wife Sophie unharmed. Later that day, after a change of plans, the Archduke's driver took a wrong turn. By sheer tragic coincidence, the car stopped right in front of one of the assassins, a young man named Gavrilo Princip, who had thought his chance was gone. He couldn't believe his luck. He stepped forward and fired 2 shots, killing both the Archduke and his wife. The spark had been lit. Austria-Hungary was absolutely livid. You can just imagine the outrage in Vienna. They saw the assassination not just as the murder of their future emperor, but as a direct attack by Serbia, aimed at dismantling their empire. So with strong backing from their powerful ally, Germany, who gave them a famous blank check promising unconditional support, Austria-Hungary decided this was their chance to crush Serbia once and for all. They sent Serbia an ultimatum. A list of demands so harsh and humiliating that it was almost impossible for any independent nation to accept them all. They wanted Austrian officials to investigate the assassination on Serbian soil, for instance. Serbia, a small nation, was in a terrible fix. They knew they couldn't fight Austria-Hungary and Germany alone. They actually agreed to most of the demands in the ultimatum, trying their very best to avoid war. But it wasn't enough for Austria-Hungary. They were determined to teach Serbia a lesson, and perhaps they even wanted a war. On 28th July 1914, exactly 1 month after the assassination, Austria-Hungary declared war on Serbia. And so the first domino fell. It was a momentous decision, one that would change the world forever, plunging it into darkness. This is where those complicated alliances really came into play, like a terrible, unstoppable machine. Russia, remember, saw itself as Serbia's protector. So when Austria-Hungary declared war on Serbia, Russia began to mobilize its vast army to come to Serbia's aid. Germany, allied to Austria-Hungary, saw Russia's mobilization as a direct threat. They demanded that Russia stop. When Russia refused, Germany declared war on Russia on 1st August. Then, because France was Russia's ally, Germany knew France would likely join the war too, so Germany didn't wait. They declared war on France just 2 days later, on 3rd August. It was happening so fast, a dizzying chain reaction. Germany had a long-standing military plan for just such a situation. A war on 2 fronts, against France in the west and Russia in the east. It was called the Schlieffen Plan. The idea was to knock out France very quickly with a massive surprise attack, before Russia could get its huge, slow-moving army fully ready. To do this, the German army planned to sweep through neutral Belgium, bypassing France's strong border defenses. They thought they could capture Paris within 6 weeks, then turn their full attention to defeating Russia. It was a bold and very risky plan, relying on speed and precision, and it completely ignored Belgium's neutrality. Border on 4th August 1914, Britain was outraged. They issued an ultimatum to Germany: get your troops out of Belgium now. Germany, focused on its Grand Schlieffen Plan, ignored the British demand, and so, later that same day, Britain declared war on Germany. The Great War, as it came to be known, had truly begun, engulfing almost all of Europe's major powers. Few could have imagined the scale of the horror that was about to unfold. The German army's march through Belgium was not just a military operation, it was brutal. There were widespread reports of atrocities committed against Belgian civilians, shootings, executions, the burning of towns and villages, including the historic library at Louvain. These acts, often exaggerated by Allied propaganda but with a terrifying basis in truth, became known as the Rape of Belgium. News of these events shocked the world, especially in neutral countries like the United States. It helped to create a very strong anti-German sentiment and painted Germany as a cruel and ruthless aggressor right from the start of the conflict. This had a huge impact on public opinion. When the war began, many generals on both sides were still thinking in terms of old-fashioned warfare. They imagined heroic cavalry charges and brave infantrymen in colorful uniforms marching across open fields. But technology had moved on. Soldiers in their bright red French trousers or spiked German helmets were easy targets for the new, terrifyingly efficient weapons of 1914 machine guns that could fire hundreds of bullets a minute, and rapid-firing artillery that could rain down shells from miles away. The old tactics were suicidal against this modern firepower. Thousands upon thousands of men were mown down in futile attacks, a truly shocking waste of life. Very quickly, to escape the deadly hail of bullets and shells, soldiers on both sides started digging. What began as simple, shallow ditches soon evolved into vast, complex networks of trenches. These trenches stretched for hundreds of miles, from the Swiss border all the way to the North Sea, creating what became known as the Western Front. Both armies dug in, facing each other across a desolate, shell-torn strip of land called No Man's Land. The war of movement that the Schlieffen Plan had envisioned ground to a halt. Instead, it became a slogging match, a war of attrition, with neither side able to deliver a knockout blow. This was the beginning of trench warfare, a new and terrible kind of hell that no one had foreseen. The war, which everyone thought would be over by Christmas, would drag on for 4 long, bloody years.